Now, just yesterday, it was reported by Deadline that Natasha Liu Bordizou would be playing Sabine Wren in the upcoming Ahsoka series, which already stars Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, and we'll see Hayden Christensen playing Anakin Skywalker in some capacity, either in flashbacks, or as a Force ghost, or maybe both, or maybe even as something else entirely, which I'll talk more about in a bit, since of course Anakin and/or Vader died in Return of the Jedi, which this show will be set some 5 years after. Anyway, what this announcement about Sabine being in the Ahsoka series says to me, or what suspicion it confirms, since it seemed pretty likely all along, is that this series, at least in part, will be a continuation of the animated series Rebels. It'll pick up sometime after, maybe almost immediately after, the epilogue scene where Sabine and Ahsoka meet up and are about to go off in search of Ezra Bridger, who was last seen being whisked away by purrgils, or space whales, along with Grand Admiral Thrawn in that same series finale episode. And so one of the big questions I think that leads to, and one that will almost certainly have to be addressed and answered by the series, is where exactly has Ahsoka been? What has she been up to? There is quite a gap between her last 2 appearances, a gap of about 10 years in fact, when you consider she's on Malachor a few years before the events of A New Hope, and then isn't seen again till Season 2 of The Mandalorian, which again is roughly 5 years after Return of the Jedi. That then means we don't know where she was or what she was up to for the entire original trilogy and for the 5 years that followed it, and considering she was helping the rebellion as a Fulcrum agent, the first Fulcrum agent actually, before everything that went down on Malachor, that is, where she learned with absolute certainty that Anakin and Vader were one and the same, well, it seems odd for her to have sat out the rest of the Galactic Civil War. I mean, one would almost think she'd immediately return to the rebellion and even tell them who Darth Vader is, tell them he's actually Anakin Skywalker, a former Jedi. Either way, you'd have to think, perhaps even feeling guilty to some degree about what happened to her former master, that she would be out there fighting and helping the rebellion any way she could. And we can feel pretty confident that she wasn't, considering I'm sure Luke would have heard about her and sought her out if she was. Or that she would have gone to him after learning someone named Luke Skywalker, who was the right age to be Padme's child, had it somehow survived. And mind you, Ahsoka knew about Anakin and Padme. Anyway, you think she would have thought that it's odd that someone just the right age, named Skywalker, was essentially running around as a Jedi and had even blown up the Death Star. Not to mention, it probably wasn't even all too big of a secret, if one at all, that Obi-Wan Kenobi had been a part of the rescue of Princess Leia, one that Luke was, of course, also a part of. Certainly if Ahsoka had looked into it, where this kid named Skywalker had even come from and how he joined the rebellion, she would have learned he was on Tatooine, Anakin's homeworld, oddly enough, and had come with someone named Kenobi. In other words here, if Ahsoka is around the rebellion in any capacity at this point, she almost certainly realizes, or strongly suspects, that Luke is Anakin's son, and I can't imagine she wouldn't be concerned about that to some degree, that she, whether she considers herself a Jedi or not at this point, wouldn't seek Luke out to either help him or warn him or something, that she'd risk Darth Vader somehow finding out and then turning Luke to the dark side, which almost does happen. That all then brings us right back to the question, where was Ahsoka at this time? Well, let's discuss some possibilities here before getting to a bit of a crazy theory. The first one is, I hope, the least likely, which is that she took the Luke Last Jedi approach and just turned her back on all of it and exiled herself for a time, before finally coming back, and only because she made a promise to Ezra to come and find him, which is another sort of question or problem, or potentially part of the solution, I suppose, which is that she does promise to find Ezra.
Keep going! You can make it!
When you get back, come and find me!
I will! I promise!
And it's interesting to note here that after returning from the world between worlds, Ahsoka does not go back to the exact time and place she left from, which was when she was about to be struck down by Darth Vader, again on Malachor. And while that makes sense because there'd be no point in her returning to the exact moment of her potential death, even though one can argue that is now a form of changing the past or changing something via time travel, but let's not get too much into that discussion right now. Anyway, instead of still being inside the temple, when she comes out of the world between worlds, where she was pulled into the world between worlds from, She seems to be outside the temple now and by some type of cave, and a cave that is presumably leading into the Sith temple. She also seems to be heading towards it, like she feels like she should go there or is being called there. Who knows exactly why she immediately just turns and heads towards it. All we know is that in the original episode where she fights Vader back in Season 2 of Rebels, the one called Twilight of the Apprentice, it ends with her descending down into that very cave, and there's every chance that Dave Filoni just had no idea what he was going to do next with her, so he gave her this very vague, mysterious little scene where, again, she's seen going into the cave, leaving us to wonder what's going to happen next with her. So could it even be then that she spends a significant amount of time on Malachor in that Sith temple? Could she even spend years there studying the ways of the dark side perhaps, and not to become a dark side user herself or anything like that, but maybe in an effort to find a way to either save or destroy Darth Vader? I certainly think that's a possibility, but then it of course runs into the same problem of why doesn't she help the rebellion in that time, or why isn't she keeping her promise to find Ezra? Unless for some reason she can't get off Malachor and is stuck there for a long period of time, even though there should be an advanced TIE fighter left behind by a dead Inquisitor or two, unless they were destroyed in the blast that we see at the temple, even though Maul took one of those TIEs. Or maybe they were destroyed by Darth Vader, who wanted to make sure that if Ahsoka had survived somehow, keeping in mind she probably just disappeared on him, that she wouldn't be able to get off the planet. And actually, that could be how she eventually does get off the planet. It could be that Vader sends some sort of task force or more Inquisitors to Malachor to see if they can find any trace of her or what happened to her. And then eventually, after some time goes by, a few days perhaps, she thwarts them and gets off the planet. At which point, she both goes back to the rebellion and tries to find Ezra, though I don't know why she thinks she needs to look for him, and more on that in a second, only to find that she's too late and Ezra again has been whisked away by Purrgil. But the curious part here is, why does Ahsoka seem to even know that she's going to have to look for Ezra? Why does she make that very solemn sounding promise in the world between worlds to him? And we could of course ask, how does Ezra know he's about to go missing, if you will? They both kind of seemed to be clued in during that scene that something is going to happen. So does that mean something truly odd is going to happen to Ezra, or did happen to him? Did the Purrgils take him to, I don't know, somewhere else, whatever that might even mean? All I know is when we look at the logo for the Ahsoka series, the background looks like it could be anything from some sort of star chart to a visual representation of something like the world between worlds. Certainly the language and the pathways and the stars do kind of line up to something like that. And so, to me, the logo very much implies something kind of large and cosmic scale could be going on in the series. Some kind of epic hunt or search across who knows what, maybe even across time and space for Ezra. Which would explain why she's completely gone for 10 years, why she seems pretty oblivious to Luke and what's going on in the war between the Empire and Rebellion. Because she is somewhere else entirely during this time, and that she's going on this journey with a version of her former master Anakin Skywalker, or maybe somewhere similar to something like the world between worlds or Mortis, where the Force ghost of Anakin can truly manifest. And I know, believe me, I know what I'm hinting at here might sound not very Star Wars-like. It might sound plain ridiculous or even stupid to you, or you're praying that I am dead wrong, which I probably am. I'm not saying I'm necessarily in love with this sort of idea either. But think about it. Why would they announce Hayden Christensen is going to be in this series unless he is going to be a big part of the series? If he's just going to be a cameo, or if he only pops up here and there, wouldn't you do all you can to keep that a secret so that fans can enjoy it and be shocked and stunned and excited by it in the moment? Letting us know ahead of time, again, kind of implies he'll be a pretty big part of this. And sure, maybe it alludes to there being a lot of flashbacks to the Clone Wars. But how exactly are you going to do that? Are you going to use Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka in those flashbacks, and then a de-aged Hayden Christensen? Because though sure, Hayden does look really good for his age, he certainly doesn't look to be in his early 20s anymore. And so my very crazy and fun theory or prediction is that the Ahsoka series will follow two timelines. One timeline will take us back to right after the events on Malachor, and we'll see Ahsoka go on some sort of strange journey through the Force with her former master Anakin in some capacity, while the other will be set in the present time period of the Mandoverse, if you will, and we'll see her and Sabine hunting down Thrawn and or Ezra after something happened as a result of that past timeline. Now, you might be wondering, what do I possibly mean by some sort of strange journey through the Force? That's very vague, and it's vague because, well, I don't know exactly what they'd try to do with it, but if I am somehow right or on the right track, I just hope it's not too strange. But do keep in mind that Ahsoka was saved by the daughter on Mortis. She essentially has her power, or something along those lines. And so keep in mind that on Mortis, what seemed to be the real Qui-Gon Jinn was able to manifest to some degree, when we know otherwise he cannot other than in voice, and yet again on Mortis he does take a physical form. So, as crazy as it all sounds, could Ezra and Thrawn somehow have ended up in what's left of Mortis, and now Ahsoka has to go there and find him? And could the Force Ghost of Anakin, and maybe the other Force Ghosts, who knows, could they be able to manifest their Foley into a physical form? And I know what you're thinking, Anakin wouldn't even be dead yet at this point, if this is the timeline right after what happened on Malachor, I mean. But we know the Force Ghosts operate on a non-linear timeline, plus with Mortis and the world between worlds and all of that, anything seems to be possible. Which, again, might not be something you like. You might not like the idea of exploring the Force in this way, and I can certainly understand that. But this could open the doorway to other things, like multiple sort of realities, another idea you might not like in Star Wars. But such a doorway could lead to things like making the EU canon, and them once again telling stories in that timeline, or even something like making the sequel trilogy a sort of separate timeline, one that came about as a result of Vader having killed Ahsoka on Malachor, having Ezra not pulling her out of that, and none of this that we will see in the series ever happening then. And again, crazy and unlikely stuff, and I'm more than likely going to be dead wrong on this one, and I'm fine with that. I love throwing out fun ideas. But who knows? Like I said, I don't think Hayden Christensen is announced if there's going to be a Force Ghost visit or two, or a couple flashbacks to the Clone Wars. I think you save that and surprise fans with it. Instead, I think it means he's going to be a big part of the show, and who knows what exactly that could mean. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about all this. Is this just too crazy and far-fetched, or could I be onto something? And if I am, do you think you'd like it or hate this idea? Whatever the case may be, you know what to do. Leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.